Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. My name is Minharina and I am from Group 1. And today my team and I will be presenting about ablution in medical circumstances, a jurisprudential discussion. So, first, before we dive into our case, our team has provided a verse from Surah Al-Ma'idah. That is verse 6 that states Allah has commanded His servants to perform ablution before performing their prayers and how to perform the ablution itself. And it also states in this ayah that if the servant is incapable of performing ablution, maybe during sickness or traveling, then he can perform tayammum instead. So, the case introduction. The scenario that was given is that you have been hospitalized due to a vehicle accident and have plaster casts POP on your left hand and also ankle. So the problem that we have occurred is that the casts cover major parts of the body required for ablution, and our goal that we want to achieve is to establish the correct method of achieving purification, that is tahara, to perform salah without compromising the medical treatment. Alright, before we dive into the solution that we have achieved in our case, I would like to brief about the wudu meanings and its benefits. So wudu means, wudu comes from the word wado'ah, that means good, beautiful and also radiant. However, in Shari'i perspective, wudu means using water on specific body parts together with the niyah or intention. So, my team and I have listed a few of benefits of wudu. That is the first one, spiritual purification. Secondly, is forgiveness of sins. Third, as an elevation in status in the sight of Allah. And lastly, as a protection in the day of judgment. So, based on the case that we have been given, we have listed two options on how to approach to do ablution on our plaster cast left arm. So we have provided with two options, then both of them is to apply it on a fully bandaged arm. So the first one is that you need to wash the face with the intention of wudu. Then you wash the part of the arm that can be reached with water up to the elbow and wipe over the plastic cast. However, if wiping over the plastic cast causes harm, you don't need to wipe it. And after that, perform prayer is not required. And the second option is the same, wash your face with the intention of wudu and using a bottle spray. Here comes the difference. Using a bottle spray, you can spray the parts of the plastic casted arm that cannot be touched with water. However, if spraying also causes harm, you don't need to spray it. And after that, perform prayer does not require also. So, next approach is for the plastic cast ankle. So, we have provided with two options for partially bandaged and also fully bandaged leg. So, for the first option, you wash your face with the intention of wudu, then you wash your hands up to the elbow and also your head, and you wash the part of the foot that can be touched with water up to the ankle. You wipe over the part that cannot be touched with anger on the bandage. But however, if the wipes causes harm, you don't need to wipe it. And after that, perform prayer also does not required. And for the second option is when you wash the face with the intention of wudu, you wash your hand to the elbow and you wash your head, and then you wipe water over the bandaged foot up to the ankle. But however, if wiping also causes harm, it does not required. So after that, the prayer performed does not need to be repeated. So I think that's all from me, and I will pass my presentation to my next friend.
Okay, so for the next part, I'm going to be explaining about tayammum. So tayammum by definition is wiping the face and also both of the hands up to the elbows using any clean dust or soils or any materials that fulfills the requirements. There are 5 situations when tayammum is needed. So for the first one is when there are no water sources available for us to do ablutions. The second one is when using the water is harmful for us. For example, when we have wounds or any medical conditions that when we apply the water on top of it, that will just increase the risk of worsening it. So the third one is when we travel long distances and then there are a very limited available water sources. The fourth one is when we are in extremely cold weather and then there are no safe ways for us to heat the water. And then for the last one is when there are obstacles that actually prevent us from getting the water. For example, there are harmful animals, enemies, or the water is too distant for us to get. Next, there are 3 prerequisites and also steps for tayammum. For the first one is niyyah. The second one is dusting the face and also the elbows. The third one is following the steps in order. So in the next video, I will show you how to actually conduct the tayammum following the correct order.
Kita ingin segalanya indah, sebersih pasir pantai memutih, seindah dan secerah pewarna, berseri ukhuwah di pupuk kasih. Kita ingin segala terlerai, dengki dan dendam kesumat musnah. Biar keikhlasan berbicara di dada hati luas saujana.
Okay, I'll be presenting about the concept of Tahara. So what is Tahara? Tahara basically means purification. And in many fiqh kitab, the first chapter will be about the concept of Tahara. So what is Tahara? Literally, Tahara means removal of physical impurities and lifting of spiritual impurities. So in the general concept of Tahara, there will be two categories. The first one is the physical purity and the second one is ritual purity. So for the physical purity, definition is actual physical cleanliness from najasah. Okay, so there are two types of najasah. The first one is najasah ainiyah, which is inherently impure, such as urine, feces and also blood. And for the second types of najasah, it is najasah hukmiyah, which is impurity established by the rulings, such as even after urination, even you cannot see any traces or any visible of the urine, it can be considered as najis. And for the ritual purity, the definition is a legal status that allows a person to perform acts of worship. So it can be achieved through, the first one is via ablution or wudu, and the second one is via ghusl, and the third one is the tayammum. So that's all for the concept of Tahara. For the next part, we'll be looking on the concept of Tahara according to each madhab al-fiqhiyah. So the first madhab is madhab Hanafi. So the general concept of Tahara for madhab Hanafi is purification should not cause haram, and it is obligation to be lifted if it is harmful. Okay, and then in rulings in medical conditions, wiping over cast or bandage is allowed, and if wiping cause harm, we can proceed with tayammum. Okay, so let's move on to the next madhab, which is madhab Maliki. For madhab Maliki, it emphasizes on flexibility during illness. So the priority is to avoid any harm conditions. And in medical conditions, wiping is allowed, cast not required to be applied after wudu. If wiping is harmful, we can proceed with tayammum. Okay, for the third madhab, which is madhab Shafi'i, for the general concept of Tahara, absorption must follow strict rules. And in the medical conditions, wiping is allowed only with strict conditions, which are, the first one is cast must be due to the necessity. The second one is it must cover entire surface, and the third one is that if cast applied without wudu when possible, we need to proceed with tayammum. Okay, the fourth madhab is madhab Hanafi. Madhab Hanafi focusing on balance between strict and flexible views. So any harms must be avoided, and in medical conditions, wiping over cast is allowed, and if wiping causes any harms, so we must proceed with tayammum. So that's basically how every scholars view on the concept of Tahara. Lastly, there are many issues may arises from Tahara. So the first issue is what counts as pure and purifying water, or we can call it as air mutlaq. So we need to determine whether water can be used for wudu or ghusl or also tayammum. So we need to make sure that the source of the water is considered as the air mutlak. Okay. And the second issue is we need to identify the physical impurities. So as these impurities can affect the cleanliness of our body, clothes, and also the validity of our prayer. And the third issue is the validity or conditions of the wudu, which is the order or tertib, continuity, and also niyah. So technical points that differ between madhab and change whether an ablution is valid, as different scholars will have different opinion on the concept of taharah. Okay, and the last issue will be when and how tayammum can be done. So central alternative when water is unavailable or harmful, and many medical cases depends on it. So we need to look into the rulings and syarat of tayammum, whether we are deserved to make and do tayammum. So that's all for the issues regarding taharah.
Kita ingin segalanya indah, sebersih pasir pantai memutih, seindah dan secerah